Renee, my co-regie, she has blossomed way more than I even have, and she's been with Unity for many more years than I have. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to be a part of Youth of Unity. And if you know any kids or you have any kids who are of age, I think the ages are they ages?
14 to 18.
14 to 18. I think that anyone, and I mean literally anyone, could benefit greatly from being a part of YOU. So thank you.
Thank you. Michael, you want to say anything?
Sure.
This is our regional coordinator. Wait, first let me say something about you, because you grew up in Youth of Unity, right?
I did.
And for a long time, Jerry Sharp was the regional coordinator for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And he got ready to retire, and he was ready to retire, and nobody was stepping up, and nobody was stepping up. And you were very young, but you stepped up and said, it's important enough to me to be the coordinator, to offer this experience for the teens, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I so admire you for that. All right,
Thank you.
tell us a few words about what's in your heart.
So, as she mentioned, I grew up in Unity from a little kid, probably Brecken's age. Brecken, right? Yeah, okay, got it. All right, cool. Working on names. So, this is my daughter, Adele, and I came up through the program, YOU, and then went away and faced life's challenges and realized that I wasn't quite complete or whole. Came back to Unity in my mid-20s, became a sponsor, and then, as it just so happened, Jerry decided it was time for him to step away, and I felt the calling, and I've been doing this about 7 years now, I think, as a regional consultant. I love it. It's a great passion of mine. I learn as much from the teens as probably they learn. Actually, I probably learned more from them than they learned from me, let's be honest. But it allows me to stay young and vibrant and active. And we don't just have YOU, which stands for Youth of Unity. We also have Uniteens, which is the middle school age. That's from ages 10 to 13, and that's a very important gap because it gets them from when they're little and their parents force them to come to when they have a mind of their own and they decide they want to stay home and play video games or something. That's a very, very valuable gap in that age range that we are now centered on and focused on. And that's why my daughter Adele is with us. She's 10. She'll be 11 this fall. And she's been to a couple of our regional events already. And we're just trying to build this thing up and grow it, and lots of excitement. So please, if you have kids or probably grandkids or nieces or nephews, bring them and bring them as often as you can. We will build a program for them. I promise you. You bring them here, we will figure something out. Michael Lawson's amazing. Reverend Cherie's been amazing. You were international consultant, right? I don't know if anybody knew that, but international consultant for YOU. So this is very big on our hearts, and we want to share it. So thank you all.
So I think one of the things that's most important now, because you hear all about loneliness and mental illness and all that stuff, and what Youth of Unity does, because I grew up in it, Mike grew up in it, your kids grew up in it, and you were in it, right? And you all are in it. The word equip comes to mind. It equips you for life. It equips you for those challenges that come, for the work challenges, for the financial challenges, for the relationship challenges. And then it also equips you with a mindset to be able to create a life of fabulous wonderfulness, amazingness. And so we want to work on this and have these young people equipped with this. I remember one time I was the international coordinator when I lived at the world headquarters in Kansas City. And we used to do conferences and have 700 young people come because they loved Unity and they were a part of that. And I felt like we were just scattering seeds for all of the nation. But I remember one of the international officers said to me, he said, I didn't want to go to church. Wasn't cool. I don't want to go to church. But he said, my mom paid me $2 to get up one Sunday. She said, I'll give you $2 if you'll go to church with me this Sunday. And he never left. He went and he became an international officer chairing the conference for all those 700 teens from around the world. And so just bribe them, whatever you need to do, get them here. because we have a spiritual responsibility. We have a responsibility as adults for their academic education, their physical education, their emotional education, but the drop is their spiritual education. And now more than ever, they need that, don't they? Yes. All right. So let's extend our hands out.
Can I get
One more
thing?
word.
Just one more plug. Mary Vink is in the back. She came with us. She comes with me to everything. Mary was a regional officer in the 70s, late 70s. Her kids all grew up in Unity, and they all three were regional officers as well. Michael was a regional officer in the 80s. His kids grew up in Unity, and they've both been regional officers. Cameron was actually an international officer as well. So this is that important to people in their lives, and I just wanted you all to know that. So.
Yeah, Mary, come on down. We want to honor you, and we're going to extend our hands out every week. We bless our children and our youth, and doesn't it look fabulous up here today? Yes. Doesn't it look at all of this? All right. Together, child of light, we love you and bless you. We see the Spirit of God within you, guiding, protecting, and prospering you always. All right, yay. Thank you so much. And they'll be around after the service. You'll come into Fellowship Hall and have some refreshments and find out, what's the most important thing for them about being a part of this, okay? Thank you so much for being here, driving from far distances, being with us today. Okay, so I do love blonde jokes, and I think I shared with you before that when I was the broker for Coldwell Banker Real Estate before my ministry life, but still always in Unity, that one of the chief counsels that handled all the training for the agents, and the other one handled all the lawsuits, but she was a Jewish woman, short, dark-haired Jewish woman attorney. And so she always used to send me all the blonde jokes right when email started. That was way back when. And then I would always send her the dead attorney in the road jokes. So I'd go into my office in the morning, there'd be pages and pages of blonde jokes. Well, here's one for you today because it has a brunette and a blonde. A blonde and a brunette worked in a factory. And the brunette says, I know how to get some time off. I know how to get some time off from work. And the blonde said, how? And the brunette says, watch this. And she climbs up into the rafters of the room and she hangs upside down and says, I'm a light bulb. I'm a light bulb. And the manager comes in and he looks up at her and he says, what are you doing? And she said, I'm a light bulb. I'm a light bulb. He says, get down from there and get out of here. You obviously need some time off. And so she starts to leave, and the blonde begins to walk out with her, and the manager looks at the blonde and says, where are you going? She says, I can't work in the dark. I can't. Oh. All right. So you've heard me share the Charles Fillmore's invocation. I am now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge thy power and presence, O blessed Spirit, and in thy divine wisdom, now bring my world into manifestation according to thy perfect law. It sounds like a lot, but it's only 3 sentences. And Charles Fillmore spoke that invocation before he began every Unity prayer meeting to pull himself and all those there into the power and presence of being. 3 sentences. I think I have part of it up on the first slide, which is the only slide until we get to the end of the message today. Essential Charles Fillmore. We're doing the Fillmores in the month of August because both of their birthdays are August, right? Myrtle Fillmore, August 6th. Charles Fillmore in 2 days, August 20th. He was born, I think I have it here, 1854, 169 years ago. But it's important. It's not like Founders Day or something, but it's important for us to just feel in our hearts the history of our movement and how it's impacted so many lives. So 3 sentences that you can memorize. I'm not going to ask you to do that right now, but I am now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. First sentence. Then I acknowledge thy presence and power, O blessed Spirit. Second sentence. Third sentence. In thy divine wisdom, and if you don't like the old churchy words, in your divine wisdom, now erase, he said, my mortal limitations, but erase all my human limitations. And from your divine From your pure substance of love, bring my world into manifestation according to thy perfect law. Bring my world into manifestation according to spiritual law. 3 sentences, really, really great. So I would encourage you to get them and memorize them and use them when you're centering yourself in prayer, because he did use them to begin every silent unity. It was Society for Silent Help with Silent Unity, to begin every prayer meeting that way. The biography of Charles Fillmore reads like an American frontiersman. From his birth on August 22nd, 169 years ago, he was born in a log cabin on an Indian reservation just outside of St. Cloud, Minnesota. And from his birth there to his adventures in the American West, he was involved with gold miners, he was involved with railroad men, he was involved with mule team drivers. He was at one time a stagecoach driver. Did you know that? A stagecoach driver. Then he got into real estate speculation, which helped him find the properties that he grew the unity movement through. And his early life reflected a persistent self-reliance, and a struggle really against all odds. Now, our message today, Essential Fillmore, could go in a lot of directions. There's just so much to talk about, but I thought I'd do some of the history of Charles Fillmore and unity, and then some of his own best quotes or writings and sharing, so that you can hear his beliefs in his actual writings, through his writings. I was going to say through his actual voice, but we won't hear his voice. We'll hear his writings. He grew up in the wilderness of Minnesota and spent a great deal of time wandering in and out of Indian lodges and teepees as freely as the Indian children did. He was always very mystical, and there's something about that time in the Native American tribes that may have instilled in him the sense of nature and a presence of Native American feelings. However, the various tribes were always seemed to be warring against each other. And when Charles was 2 years old, and his mother was alone home in their cabin, a band of painted Sioux Indians rode into the front yard, if you could call it the front yard, and the medicine man, fully painted in all of his regalia, strode into the cabin, ripped Charles Fillmore at age 2 away from his mother, and the whole band of warriors rode off with him. Now, you can imagine. But later that night, they brought him back. And it just gives whole new meaning to the terrible twos, doesn't it? They brought him back. So he says he can't remember what happened, but he always felt had a feeling that they used him in some mystical ceremony or ritual, some Native American, because the medicine man is the one who came and took him in full regalia and then, brought him back. At age 10, and you may have heard some of this, but it's good for us to recall it. At age 10, he had an ice skating accident and he broke his hip, which was probably the determining factor in his life. He was then treated by a lot of doctors, many of them quacks, trying to, experiment on how his hip could be healed. And the result was he spent 2 years in enormous pain with a diseased hip, and he ended up having to wear a leg brace most of his life with a 4-inch lift in his shoe. He had a limp, and he walked like this for a long time. That injury would prove to be a blessing, because as a child then, he went through those 2 years of all kinds of poking and prodding and whatever, and he didn't know then what it was to give up to sickness, to give up to discouragement, to give up to thinking things wouldn't work out. He developed a spirit that was not daunted by pain, he developed a spirit that was vital and determined and courageous, and so we're grateful for that. Then there was his romance with Myrtle Fillmore. As he grew up, when he met Myrtle, he said it was love at first sight. He felt that it was love at first sight. And with Myrtle as his partner, together they began the development of the unity movement. She was a major influence on his spirituality. And she's the one that it was 1886, he and Myrtle attended a New Thought classes by Dr. E.B. Weeks. And it was in that first lecture, or in one of those lectures, that Myrtle heard Dr. Weeks say, I am a child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness. And Myrtle had tuberculosis and all of these family ills that she thought she had inherited, that she was destined to die from or to have or to experience. But when she heard that, and we'll talk about Myrtle in the next, we'll do essential Myrtle in the next lesson. But when she heard that, I'm a child of God, therefore I don't inherit sickness. I inherit my being from the Spirit of God, which is pure and whole and perfect. And she took that to heart. And we'll talk about her healing, which she effected. She'd been given 3 months to live, and she lived 46 years beyond her diagnosis. And when she subsequently recovered from chronic tuberculosis, she attributed her recovery to the prayer methods that Dr. Weeks had taught her. So, subsequently, as many husbands often do, he saw Myrtle, something worked for Myrtle, maybe it's true, I should try it. He decided to try and practice the prayer methods that Myrtle had followed. And it was his leg condition that stimulated his interest in what was at the time called the Mind Cure movement. And had he not needed that healing, it's unlikely that he would have sought as determinedly or as broadly as he did. But here's what he did. He made a bargain with God that he would sit in the silence for 1 hour every night and open himself to some kind of indication that there was a God, some kind of communication from God, some kind of ideation about God. And he would do it for 3 months, and he usually sat in the silence from 3 to 4 a.m. because he felt all the earth was calmer during that time. Now, in 1886, I don't know how much noise there was in a farming community at 3 to 4 a.m., but there was a vibration. Even at that time, he was thinking and feeling about the vibration. And he decided he would sit in the silence for 1 hour every night, faithfully, for 3 months. And if at the end of that time he was no better, if his leg was no better, if his life was no better, he'd bail on everything. He'd give up on spirituality. And so, at the end of 3 months, what do you think? He wasn't better. He wasn't better, but he said he rather liked sitting in the silence because the time of meditation gave him such enormous stress relief and so much strength and so much inner knowing that he decided he would keep up. He would keep up with the practice. And so then he found that he began to remember his dreams. He started we always dream, right? But we don't always remember them. So he decided that he started recalling his dreams. And it was in his dreams that he uncovered a lot of financial success, a lot of business, where to go to have business success. He was in real estate, how to make all that come together. It was in his dreams that he was led to buy the property that is now Unity Village, 1,100 acres of a retreat center. It was in his dreams that he dreamed the name Unity for our movement, and he felt then that God was speaking to him through his dreams, that was the form of communication that God had shown to him that would be most valuable. Most importantly, he eventually began to notice physical healing in his leg, and that his study and use of mind cure practices proved healing to his condition in a way that the medical practices of his time did not or could not. And so, relieved of his chronic pain, which is the first thing that came, his leg grew in strength and in length, providing him with what he called the practical verifications, providing him with the proof that this stuff works, So he moved from not really thinking about anything other than they had a prayer group, to healthy skepticism when he went to Dr. Weeks' lecture. Then he made a determined experimentation. And then lastly, when he began to get proof in the healing of his leg and it was growing longer, he made a wholehearted, dedicated, practical mysticism and faith in the power of spirit to cure anything. Anything. Because he was witnessing it in his own body. And finally, the regeneration of his leg. His leg began to restore itself to its original pattern of perfection. And that inspired him to his total body regeneration, that we have the ability to regenerate our bodies completely. And that permeated the last, I don't want to say last half of his life, but that belief that the body is really an idea in divine mind and perfect in God and only imperfect in the human mind, that permeated all of his thoughts, practices, and teachings and prayer time for the latter years of his life. He said he maintained that the body is a reality, an idea in divine mind, and is perfect in God mind, and only appears to be ill or appears to be imperfect in our human minds. And he asserted that if we align our minds with divine mind and align with the divine idea of our body, the original pattern of perfection of our body, that we can return our bodies or restore our bodies to its original pattern of perfection. Now, the same is true for your relationships. The same is true for your finances. The same is true for the prosperity of your life, for the health of your life, for all of your life. It all comes from divine mind. And if you align with the perfection, I am now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge thy power and presence, O blessed Spirit, and in thy divine wisdom, erase anything that's blocking me or getting in the way, and from your pure substance of love, bring my life, my world, my body, my affairs, my relationships into manifestation according to thy perfect law. And that's really what he lived with. And while many of the mind cure age advocated this idealism that the body is whole and perfect in God, they didn't have any practical methods for healing. But he worked out the practical methods, and as an adult, he grew his injured leg from wearing a 4-inch lift in his shoe and walking with a limp to only needing a 1-inch lift in his shoe at the end of his life. So his leg was restoring itself. And had he said lived longer, he really felt that he could complete the regeneration and restoration of his leg. So, experiencing his healing firsthand and seeing the capabilities of his body to respond to prayer and right thinking, it's always prayer and then right thoughts that are feeding your body, Charles began to affirm that he was going to live forever. Now, Dorothy Pearson, who was my longtime minister and minister for many of us, lived in an apartment over Mr. Fillmore's garage, knew him personally, took walks with him, and he'd say, "I'm going to live forever." And Dorothy would say, "Mr. Fillmore, don't say that so loudly." And he would walk along with Dorothy, and she'd say, "Oh, Mr. Fillmore, I feel so free, I could just fly." And he said, "Dorothy, I'm your landlord. Can you pay your rent?" So he was practical, and at that time she was aspirational. And when he tried to be aspirational, she tried to kind of tamp that down, afraid that when he really got into this idea of regeneration, and he said he was going to live forever, you take hold of something and you declare it for your life. And maybe you're not successful with it in this lifetime, but who knows when it's really going to happen for all of us, right? So at first he believed in reincarnation. And that understanding grew, and he believed that regeneration of the body could go on forever. So a lot of people ask, does Unity believe in reincarnation? And we have to say, Mr. Fillmore believed in regeneration, not reincarnation, that we shouldn't have to die and come back and die and come back, that our bodies, we should be here forever. He felt that our cells were capable of regenerating and could be built or restored to vibrant health through prayer and right thinking. Now, if you've ever heard Deepak Chopra lecture, in the early days, he would come on stage and he'd say, "If I'm here today and I have a suitcase with me with all my stuff, and I go to the airport and I get on a plane and I leave here for 7 years, and I come back at the end of those 7 years, every single cell in my body has replaced itself. Every single tissue, fiber, and cell in my body has replaced itself. You make a new stomach," he'll tell you, I can't remember the numbers. "You make a new stomach every 3 months. You make a new heart every so often. You make a new liver every so often." And what's causing the regeneration of those body organs and tissues? Your thoughts about them. I love my liver. I love my kidneys. I love my spine. I love my back. Not, oh, I have such back trouble. Oh, the pain. You can't believe it. Oh, I just can't sleep. I have insomnia. Stop with that, because the words that you're feeding, your body can hear you. Your body can hear you. And in 7 years, Deepak Chopra says you're not the same person physically that you were 7 years ago. So let's advance to 7 years. When is that? Don't let me do the math here. 2023 plus 7 would be 2030. Right. So in 2030, who are you going to be? Well, how are you going to be physically? What do you want to be physically? Because Mr. Fillmore said, and Deepak says, you can be anything. You can be anything. And I'm really excited because at the first of the year, I'm going to kick off a program in January called Launch Your, I don't know the name of it yet, but the idea is Launch Your Best Decade Ever. What do you want for the next 10 years of your life? What's it going to look like? What are you creating? What's so exciting for you? So right now we're talking about in the next 7 years, what do you want to look like? You want to get back in your bathing suit? Or you want to look better in your current bathing suit? I don't know. But anyway, Mr. Fillmore did die, obviously, at age 94 in 1948. So think about living to almost 100 in the 1940s. He made a pretty good go at it in terms of staying alive. And he was active and working every day. And at age 94, he wrote the affirmation, I fairly sizzle with joy and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the work that ought to be done by me. Still growing unity, still developing unity at age 94. So, he also, just a paragraph on his Bible, his approach and understanding to the Bible was rooted in metaphysics, which is spiritual interpretation. He studied the writings of Swedenborg, the Theosophists, the Rosicrucians. He also studied the teachings of Emerson, Shakespeare, Lord Tennyson, as well as the spiritualism of Eastern religions. He was really studied a lot of the Hindu religion, and you can see some of those ideas woven into the unity teachings. He took the scriptures very seriously as revelations for attaining the consciousness and power that was demonstrated by Jesus Christ. He felt that there was a mysticism in the spiritual understanding of those ancient texts and writings that, when understood and studied, would enlighten the consciousness to a fuller understanding of the way Jesus understood them. And that we should then be able to produce and do, as Jesus said, the things that I do, you can do also. He believed in all the miracles attributed to Jesus and the disciples. And he believed that following Scripture meant claiming your own divinity and working through prayer and right thinking to produce your own miracles. He wrote and spoke for more than 60 years and published 9 books. He spoke at Unity of Nashville after, not when I was there. After Myrtle died and he married Cora, they kind of had to get out of Dodge for a while because everybody loved Myrtle, and now Cora was the new wife. And so they took a 3-month tour, and as part of that tour, they came to Unity of Nashville, and he spoke there. So we kind of have that history and legacy. I have a Metaphysical Bible Dictionary Gold Edition, special embossed edition, signed by Charles Fillmore. So it's really nice. All right, so his key beliefs. What did he believe? He believed that it was as right for the human self of you, that the human self of you and the divine are one, that there's no separation, and that it is right for people to have an alert mind, a healthy body, and prosperity in their affairs. It's as much right for you as a human being as it is for you as a spiritual being. There's none of this, I'm so spiritual, I'm no earthly good. And it's not, I'm so earthly, I'm spiritually vapid or whatever. He came to those, this is interesting because during his time and the faith traditions of the world, he came to those who had been taught that God is far away, hard to approach, that God is a stern judge, and that life is meant to be a trial and vale of tears. And he proved to them by his own way of living that none of those things are true, right? That God is love. God is love. He believed there's nothing we should not take to God in prayer, no matter how large or how small. And this is a direct quote. He said, Well, he said God was his personal friend, and he spent many hours every day in simple conversations with God. And you've heard me share that his granddaughter, Rosemary, Mr. Fillmore would be walking around the house, and then he'd just stop and stand in the silence of prayer for a few moments. And Rosemary would be playing with her little friends, and they'd, "What's wrong with your grandfather?" And she's always in the silence. And Rosemary always said, I said that like every person's parent or grandparent did that. But he would stop and stay in those moments of conversation to stay in the vibration of spirit. He loved God, God loved him, and they met together frequently and talked over everything. This is what he wrote of God. Never be formal with God. He cares no more for forms and ceremonies and rituals than does the principle of mathematics care for fine figures and elaborate blackboards. You cannot use, and I say now, the Spirit of God cares no more for forms, ceremonies, and rituals than the principle of mathematics cares for fine figures or AI, artificial intelligence, right? Because there's a bigger intelligence. There's a divine intelligence, right? You can't, and this is Mr. Fillmore still. You cannot use God too often. He loves to be used, and the more you use him, the more easily you use him. And again, this is the language from the 40s, so it's he, the gender is him. He loves to be used, and the more you use him, the more easily you use him, and the more pleasant his help becomes. If you want to, this surprised me, because he's talking now about material things. If you want a dress, a car, a home, or if you're thinking of driving a sharp bargain with your neighbor, if you're going on a journey, if you're giving a friend a present, if you're running for office, if you're reforming a nation, ask God for guidance in a moment of silent soul desire, right? Just standing still for a moment and allowing. So, praying for a dress or a car, well, a dress brings beauty. You're an instrument of spirit. That dress brings beauty to the world. You're expressing the beauty of spirit. That car brings ease of movement and transportation and flow, doesn't it? So you're an instrument of spirit. And when spirit drops in an idea, oh, I'll have a new dress. I need to buy a car. I want to buy a car. Whatever the desire is, it's some form of spirit expressing through you into the material reality of the world. Are you with me? James Dillett Freeman, the author of the Prayer for Protection that we say here every week, says, because Charles Fillmore was a man of prayer, but a practical man as well, thousands of people today have health of body, success in their affairs, and happiness in their lives that they would never have had except for him. And I think we're here. We're the generation after the generation after the generation. So I have some slides to show us, but I want to begin with a covenant that Charles and Myrtle Fillmore made secretly, just between the two of them. They vowed to serve God. And listen to how they said it before we look at the next little slides. It was in December 7th of 1892, so 131 years ago. They're going to E.B. Weeks lectures. They're finding spiritual proof in healing the body. They're moving in all of this. And they made and signed a secret covenant with God that wasn't discovered until almost 50 years later by the archivists. Its spirit motivated their lives and work, and they felt that they were doing God's work. They were not doing it to enrich themselves. They were doing it because they believed in God and wanted to help others discover their own power and authority in God. So here's what they wrote. We, Charles Fillmore and Myrtle Fillmore, husband and wife, hereby dedicate ourselves, our time, our money, all we have and all we expect to have to the Spirit of Truth, and through it to the Society of Silent Unity. Society of Silent Unity. That's what it was first called. It being understood and agreed that the same Spirit of Truth shall render unto us an equivalent for this dedication in peace of mind, health of body, wisdom, understanding, love, and an abundant supply of all things necessary to meet our every want, without our making any of these things the object of our existence. So covenant, right? We dedicate everything we have and expect to have to you, God, and it being understood and agreed that that same spirit that we're moving in will render unto us health of body, peace of mind, understanding, wisdom, and an abundant supply of everything we need to do this, right? And in the presence of the conscious mind of Christ Jesus, this 7th day of December, 1892, signed, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. So, what would your covenant of life be to your spirituality, to your spiritual growth, to allowing Spirit to move in and through you in every way? You don't have to become a minister, but you're encouraging others. You're speaking a word of positive, practical encouragement to everyone around you, to your family. Are you the light of your family, you know? In Unity, at Unity Village, when they first built it, the son, Rickert, who was the architect, built a room that was originally the administration room. And I think this is the slide that I have for it. Yeah. It's called the Room of Shining Words. And you can see that there's these acrylic things up around the top of the room with affirmations. And there's a light behind them. It's called the Words to Light Your Way. They line the upper edge of the circular walls of the Room of Shining Words, built as a reception area in the administration building. It was completed in 1949, and it was the reception area. It's a room that's adorned with walnut paneling, wainscoted copper panels. But when you stand in the center of the room, and there's all these lighted 10 affirmations around you, and you speak, your words vibrate. So you can hear, you have a practical demonstration of the vibration of spirit in your life as you speak the words. And Rickert designed that so that there's an echo back to you of your own words. In the center of the ceiling is a dome that creates an echo effect when anyone speaks when standing directly under it. And the affirmations there were said to be 10 of Charles Fillmore's favorite. So on these slides, I have those 10 affirmations for us today with some pictures, some old pictures and new pictures of what the idea in the mind of God dropped into Charles Fillmore that he received after sitting in the silence and moving through years and years of developing unity. This is young Charles Fillmore. Let's affirm it. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Together, the joy of the Lord is your strength. Can you hear him saying that to you with that leg growing longer? And the next one. This is Unity Village. This was the water tower, and Rickert hated water towers, so he built this thing to cover it up. And it's a historical monument now in Kansas City and Lee Summit, Missouri, and it's really an iconic image for unity. Together, God in me is infinite wisdom. He shows me what to do. You'll remember my story last week about Charles' grandson, Charles, having lunch with his friend, that they were in the military together. And as Unity Village began to grow and buildings like this began to appear, he said they had fruit that they would sell at a little corner fruit stand. And the friend of Charles says, is that little fruit stand generating all the revenue to build all this stuff? I said, no. And all love offerings of Fillmore's never asked for payment for anything. Next one is, in all thy ways, together, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct thy path. At Unity of Nashville, we were having our 90th celebration of the ministry, and some designers put this on the postcard invitation to send it out. And the young people came in and said, well, that looks like your great-grandparents. Who would come to a party with that? And so we changed it. But I've always liked this photograph of them. I don't know when it was taken, but anyway, there they are together later in life. Next one. This is the door for many years in the buildings. This is a little brick walkway into that door, and inside that door is a kind of tiny room, maybe no bigger than this platform, and there are 6 chairs, three chairs, and then there's an open Bible and some lights. And for years and years and years, no one could go into the Silent Unity telephone prayer room, of course, to hear anything that's going on in there. But in the prayer, and so this was the room that was underneath. The Silent Unity prayer telephone room was above this. And so this was open to the public, where you could go in and sit in the chairs in that prayer room and pray and feel like it was just the vibration, years and years and years of prayer in that room. When they moved to the new Silent Unity building and they have the light that shines for you, Dorothy Pearson and James Dillett Freeman walked the light across the courtyard over to the new Silent Unity building to keep the light shining for all of us in terms of prayers for Silent Unity. So let's do this affirmation together. I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. Right, next one. This is the old language, naught can disturb me, for Christ is my peace and poise. There's a pretty familiar unity affirmation, all things, nothing can disturb the calm peace of my soul. Have you had that one, read that one? And then we thought, well, then a whole lot of nothings show up to disturb the calm peace of your soul. So we say, all things contribute to the calm peace of my soul. This was his original idea behind that. Together, naught can disturb me, for Christ is my peace and my poise. Right, next one. This is the Fillmore Chapel. This is where he preached. These columns, you can't see it right there now, but they've all been hand painted with the most mosaic, beautiful blues and pinks with gold stuff in them and all of that. And the Fillmores would sit there in the chairs and lecture. In Fillmore Chapel, they've since gone on to much bigger auditoriums at Unity Village, but they would sit in two chairs, and if Charles was going on too long, he would usually wear a coat or tails when he spoke. If it's going on too long, Myrtle would grab his coat and jerk it like that for him to, get the hook, get off stage or whatever. Let's use this affirmation. Faith is the strength of the soul inside, and lost is the man without it. And that's kind of what we were saying about the youth today, right? If they're not equipped with a spiritual anchoring, a spiritual foundation, the road ahead is going to be a little bit tougher for them, isn't it? Okay, next one. Together, in quietness and confidence shall be your strength. That's him sitting in the silence every night for an hour in the beginning, and then just having moments of prayer where he could just download and align with the universal consciousness quickly. Right, next one. God is my help in every need. Together, God is my help in every need. This is the gathering for the vegetarians in the 30s or 40s. They were having a lecture or some kind of seminar for vegetarianism. Unity became vegetarian, and the inn served vegetarian as well as non-vegetarian things on the menu. Myrtle was, I think, always a vegetarian, but Charles evolved into that. And then after she died and he married Cora, he began eating fish. But he never went back to eating meat. But all right, did we say that one? Yeah, we did. Next one. The greatest teaching ever given is Christ in you, the hope of glory. And that's kind of the summation of his life, that everything evolves and flows out of that Christ spirit. Is there anything else there, or was that? So this is what, and this affirmation is Romans 8:28. You know how I know that? Because my birthday's 8/28. And so this is my birthday scripture. Together, all things work together for good. So you saw those early pictures. Now on 1,100 acres is Unity Village. And so you see there are fountains. It's done in a Mediterranean style. For those of you who haven't been there, there's fountains, there's trees, there's a rose garden, there's a lake, there's a 9-hole golf course, there's everything you could ever want. And they've turned some of the older buildings into Airbnbs. So if you want to go and stay on the grounds, I always say when you go to Unity Village and your foot steps onto the ground, it's as though the ground and the earth and everything, all the years of prayers, all the years of tears, everything that's gone on there, the ground reads your soul. And it comes up through your feet and up through your body as you retreat. And if you need to cry a million tears, you will not be able to stop crying when you're there. If you need to make friends and laugh and have joy, when you're there, all of that opens for you. There is something about, Charles Fillmore believed there were 3 places in the United States where the energy vortex came together, and this ground was one of them. And if you're there, you believe it because you can just feel the enormity of hundreds of years of prayer there, hundreds of years of commitment to the Spirit of God. And this is what, when those ideas dropped into him and he began to remember his dreams, this was what it ended up to be, and still is today, 180 years later. All things together, all things work together for good, for those who love God and are called according to his purposes. Romans 8:28. All right, I think that's it. Is that it? Last one? Okay. All right, let me see if I had anything else here for you. I think that's enough for today. You've had your history lesson, your Charles Fillmore Essential Charles. Give thanks for the mind that created it for us. Thank you. And if you haven't been to Unity on retreat, they have lots of retreats, 6 or 7 every year, and I would strongly encourage you to take one, sign up for one. Oh, it is. It's meditation time. I was thinking of song time. I did, I saw her. All right, so let's take all of that into our hearts. And unlike last week where you had to take a deep breath in and hold it, let's take a deep breath in and let it out. Breath of spirit. The illuminating, enlightening presence of God, the universal consciousness that has loved us with an everlasting love. And you, like Charles, can be open and receptive and then responsive to the inspiration that comes to you. And whether it comes in a book that you pick up and read, a text that you read, an idea that drops in, a dream that you have, words spoken in conversation with someone. You, like Charles, are an instrument of spirit, capable, equipped to meet your life brilliantly. Charles always liked to invite the presence of Jesus Christ into his prayer time, to lift his mind up to what he believed was the level of consciousness that was Jesus Christ. I am now lifted up into the Jesus Christ level of awareness and understanding. I am now lifted into the Jesus Christ level of love. My mind is one with the mind of Christ. And it's in that streaming, that opening and allowing the flow of the universal Christ consciousness that all things are possible, that all things work together for good. It's in this silence that we meet the infinite intelligence that guides our lives. So let yourself be centered in divine mind. My mind is one with the mind of God. My mind is one with the mind of God. Let's affirm it. My mind is one with the mind of God. Now feel after that. Breathe into that. And with each rise and fall of your breath, imagine the Spirit of God filling you, streaming in and through you for the sole purpose of loving you. And then if there's any particular concern in your life this morning, you can see Spirit moving in the circulation of your body, your blood, moving in the thoughts of your mind, circulating in the feelings and emotions in your heart. The mind of Christ is moving in the business affairs of your life, your investments, your pension. It's moving in the love in your relationships. God is your all-providing life and wholeness, and your healing is assured. God is your all-providing love and peace, and your relationships are harmonious. God is your all-providing love and substance, and your prosperity is assured. Now free fall on that. Let go and let God. Step aside and let God, from thy pure substance of divine love, bring your world into manifestation according to thy perfect law. As we let our mind turn to others, those on our prayer list here in the names in our prayer box, each one of you here, your loved ones, particularly at this time for our Congress, our Senate, our President. Divine intelligence guides you in ways of wisdom, peace, harmony, and prosperity. All of our minds are one with divine mind. Let's say it that way. Our minds are one with divine mind. There's only one of us here. For our neighbors in Maui, may the one who comes as comforter bring peace, the peace that passes all understanding, to their hearts. For our blessed Mother Earth and the Southern California storms, Jesus raised his hands to the waves and said, "Peace, be still." And so in our mind's eye, we see Spirit moving in and through everything and everyone. And our hearts swell up with love, and we feel eternally grateful. And so it is. Together we all say, Amen. That's good.